You know, your liver is an absolute powerhouse, but even a powerhouse has its limits. When it gets pushed too far for too long, it starts to develop these permanent, irreversible scars. That condition is called cirrhosis. And today, we're going to break down exactly how this final scar forms and the really devastating domino effect it can trigger throughout your entire body.
All right, so let's get right into it with a solid definition. Cirrhosis isn't really a disease in itself. It's more like the end-stage result of all kinds of long-term damage. The two words you really got to focus on here are extensive and irreversible. This isn't some temporary issue that can just heal up. We're talking about permanent scarring that completely changes the structure of the liver.
You know, to really get a handle on how bad cirrhosis is, you first have to appreciate what a healthy liver does. It's truly the body's master processing plant. It filters toxins, it manages everything you eat and drink, and it makes these vital substances, like the proteins that help your blood clot. It's absolutely central to keeping you running.
And that is the million-dollar question, isn't it? What happens when this essential plant gets all clogged up with scar tissue and just starts shutting down? Well, because the liver is so central to everything, this failure isn't just a local problem. Oh no, it creates this massive ripple effect of problems that can hit nearly every other system in your body.
So let's get into the mechanics of it. How does this organ, which is famous for its incredible ability to regenerate, get to a point of no return? Well, it definitely doesn't happen overnight. It's a slow, grinding, destructive process that happens in distinct stages.
The whole path to disaster follows these 4 basic steps. See, it all kicks off with some kind of chronic inflammation, maybe from a virus or long-term alcohol use. This constant attack starts destroying the liver's main worker cells, the hepatocytes. Now, the body's natural reaction is to try and patch things up by laying down scar tissue. But when the attack just keeps coming, this repair process goes haywire, creating these thick bands of scar tissue that form hard nodules, and those nodules end up blocking all the internal pathways for blood and bile.
So here's the bottom line. This physical change, this transformation, has absolutely devastating consequences for how the liver functions. What was once a soft, flexible organ becomes hard, shrunken, and lumpy. Its internal structure gets so twisted and blocked that it just can't do its job anymore. And this physical scarring, it leads directly to the first major domino that's about to fall, a massive traffic jam in your circulatory system. The scar tissue basically creates a giant roadblock on one of the body's most critical highways. This whole situation is called portal hypertension. So, the portal vein is this huge vessel, this superhighway, that carries all the blood, rich with nutrients from your digestive system, straight to the liver to be processed. But in cirrhosis, that scar tissue physically blocks the highway. And just like a real traffic jam, the pressure starts building up like crazy behind the blockage.
And we're not talking about a small change here. Normally, the pressure in this vein is super low, less than 5 millimeters of mercury. With cirrhosis, that pressure can easily double, shooting up to over 10. It's this intense back pressure that becomes the engine driving most of the really serious complications we're about to get into.
Now, here's where the body does something kind of amazing, in a desperate sort of way. When that main highway is blocked, the blood tries to find a detour. It forces its way down these tiny, fragile little veins that were never meant to handle that kind of traffic. Seriously, it's like a highway gets shut down, and suddenly all the semi-trucks are flooding onto quiet little neighborhood streets. It's a recipe for disaster.
This whole circulatory crisis is the trigger for a devastating domino effect. Once portal hypertension really takes hold, a whole cascade of other serious health problems starts to pop up.
This brings us to the 2 big phases of the disease. In the early days, you've got what's called compensated cirrhosis. The liver's scarred, yeah, but it's still, compensating. It's managing to get its job done. A person might not feel any symptoms at all. But as the damage gets worse, it tips over into decompensated cirrhosis. And that's when the whole system starts to openly fail, and the complications become really severe and obvious.
So here they are, the biggest dominoes to fall. That crazy back pressure causes fluid to leak into the belly. It causes dangerous swelling in veins. It makes the spleen get bigger. It lets toxins build up and mess with your brain. And of course, it causes that classic yellowing of the skin and eyes we call jaundice. Let's take a closer look at a few of these.
First up is ascites. That huge amount of pressure in the portal system literally squeezes the watery part of the blood, the plasma, right out of the blood vessels and into the abdominal cavity. This can cause a massive, super uncomfortable, and pretty dangerous buildup of fluid.
And hey, remember those detours we were talking about?
Well, one of the main detour routes is through the veins in the esophagus. These veins just weren't built for that pressure. They swell up like overinflated balloons, and we call them varices. The scary part is they are incredibly fragile and can just rupture without any warning, causing a catastrophic, life-threatening bleed.
And then there's the brain. See, a healthy liver is constantly filtering out toxins, like ammonia, which is just a normal byproduct of digesting protein. But when the liver is failing, that ammonia starts to build up in the blood. It travels to the brain and basically acts like a poison, leading to this whole range of cognitive problems called hepatic encephalopathy.
And the progression is, well, it's terrifying. Look at how it starts. It can be really subtle, just some small personality changes or trouble sleeping. But as it gets worse, it can lead to severe confusion, a really characteristic hand-flapping tremor called asterixis, and ultimately it can lead to a coma, where a person can't even be woken up.
So, after all that, you have to be wondering, what on earth kicks off this entire chain reaction? What are the main things that cause that chronic inflammation that ultimately leads to cirrhosis? Well, in the US, the data points to a few major culprits. For the longest time, the #1 cause was a chronic infection with the hepatitis C virus. Right up there with it, of course, is chronic heavy alcohol use. But there's a third one that is just exploding in recent years: non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And just like the name says, it has nothing to do with alcohol. It's tied directly to modern health problems like obesity and type 2 diabetes.
And when we talk about alcohol, this quote highlights a really important point about the differences between men and women. It shows that it can take a lot less chronic drinking for a woman to develop cirrhosis than a man. Because of differences in physiology, for women the damage can start with as little as 2 to 3 drinks a day over about 10 years.
So after going through this whole cascade of failure, from that first scar to the final, life-threatening problems, what's the most important thing to walk away with?
Let's just quickly recap the big points. First, the scarring from cirrhosis is permanent. You can't undo it. Second, that big vascular traffic jam, portal hypertension, that is the key domino that knocks everything else over. Third, the damage isn't just in the liver, it's a whole body problem. But, and this is the most important part, many of the main causes like viral hepatitis, alcohol use, and fatty liver disease are things we can often prevent or treat. We can stop the damage before it gets to this final, irreversible stage.
And that really leaves us with this one last thought. Because this disease often creeps up silently without any symptoms for years, sometimes decades, prevention is everything. It is all about protecting that vital gatekeeper before the damage is done. Because by the time you realize there's a serious problem, it might already be way too late to turn back.